Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chesswise. Today we are going to look at the next topic, that is the position solving for improvement. We know that in this section we try to find moves and try to calculate variations. So today what I have done is I have kept the black side down. So we have to use the coordinates on the right hand side here, okay, and on the top. So the squares naming will be the same, but black has come on the down, we can say, and the white pieces are on the upper side. So the coordinates will be, now see, this is G8, okay, it falls on the G5 and on the 8th rank, that way, and white king is on the H3 square. We are going to find moves for black here. Black to play positions are there, so basically I wanted to keep the black pieces on the down side so that we are able to think from black's perspective. I would of course recommend that you should do all these positions by setting up your own board and pieces. Try to solve the positions, imagine the upcoming positions in your mind, try to find candidate moves and then match up with the solution given here. So this is the position black to play. Let's get into the moves first quickly. So the candidate moves which come to mind are rook h5 check, rook g3 check and rook g2. See, both rook g2 are possible, but the point is, if we take rook cg2 or rook ggg2, rook e8 would be checkmate. So white is also threatening black, so black has to go for forced lines. As per our method, we will choose rook g3 or rook h5 depending upon the one which allows least variation first. So if we look at rook h5, we see that there is only one move, kg4, and after rook g3 there are two moves, kh2 and kh4. So black calculates in the move rook h5 when kg4, and after which we see that the rook is hanging. So rook into g2 check can allow king into h5, but the king's placing on h5 will be very weak. When after g6 check, king h4, knight f5 check, but still there is king h5, h3, and there is no forced mate in that position. Another problem, rook h5 check, kg4, rook g2, then king f4, where black is still piece up, but we see that there is no mate coming up. So black starts his calculation in the next candidate, rook g3 check, which is more forced, I won't say, which is forced, but it is keeping the white king blocked. It is putting him on the h5. So rook g3 check, king h4, now knight f5 check, and we see that after knight f5, king has again only one square on h5 when the pawn goes to g6 and checkmate. So see, rook g3 check, kh4, knight f5 check, king h5 and g6 checkmates. So that leaves us with the other line, rook g3 check, king h2. Now it looks like there is rook g2 check, rook ggg2 check and knight f3 check. So three variations to be seen, but black went into the move nf3 check first. Now see, we could have used rook c g2 also, because there is also again only one move, king h1. But what we see there, that both of these rooks are unable to give check. Any rook gives check, the rook will be taken, rook h2 then kh2, rook h3 then kg2. So black wants to add new piece into the attack. So this is what happens when we do lot of positions. Because of experience also we come to know which candidate we should take first. So here black went into the move nf3 first because he felt if he adds more piece into the attack, both variations are forcing one move only. Let's add one more piece in the attack. So rook g3 check, kh2, knight f3 check, kh1. Now it looks as if there is no useful check, but knight on f3 and rook on c2 we see create a mating pattern we have discussed before also. Now comes rook h3 check. Now pawn has to take the rook because king has no place, and when pawn takes the rook, the 7th rank rook is opened, and see, rook h2 is checkmate. Let's play the moves and see. Rook g3 check, kh2, knight f3 check, king h1 forced, rook h3 check, forcing gh3 and rook h2 mate. Black could force all the moves and white never got chance to execute his ideas. Let's look at the next position here. The position is somewhat sharp and both are attacking each other's king. Again, it's black to play. So we will find moves for black. Looking at the white king safety, we can make out that black has got some checks, but just rook and knight are close enough to the king. Do note that the bishop on e7 is very important. It is controlling the a3 square. That is one of the main reasons why the white king got mated. And the rook on g8 is active. It will be able to enter the opponent's territory from the g1 square. If we look at white is threatening rook h7 check and he can cause some problem. But after king e8, we see the black king is still safer as compared to white. So the black moves which come to mind are, see, rook b2 check and knight c3 check. These two moves are there for the time being because black is trying to force things. King lacks space, it has got only two squares. So again we see the role of rook and knight. In the previous position also we saw how rook and knight were used to create mating patterns. Again today also in some positions I have purposely taken so that we try to do repeatedly some positions based on patterns so we can remember it for a longer time. And now what happens after the move rook b2, we are forcing him to take rook b2 because if we look at variations after nc3 also, see, there are 1 and 2, only two moves, and after rook b2 also there are two, rook b2 and king a1. But black decided to go to rook b2 first because after rook b2, if king a1, then immediately rook g1 is winning. Forced rook d1 when rook into d1 checkmates. Problem with nc3 is after bc there is no useful check and black's attack evaporates. So rook b2 check, rook b2, knight c3 check, king has to go to a1, and because of this rook on b2 the king gets mated. Now comes rook g1 check, forced rook b1 and rook takes the rook and it gets mated. So slightly different version from the previous position. Let's play the moves and see. rb2 check, rook takes b2, knight c3 check, king a1, rook g1 check, rook b1 forced and rook b1 checkmates. After rook b2 check, if direct king a1, then rook g1 check, rook has to come to d1 and rook d1 checkmates. Let's look at the next position here. Again it's black to play. We see that white has rook and 3 pieces or 2 minor pieces. But a quick look at the king position and all our black pieces which are hovering near the king, that shows us instantly that some combination might be possible. We see that black pieces are very active and they are very close to the white king. White king has no place to move. So using our previous concepts, it will be very easy to solve this position if we are able to spot the checks and the check which also happens to be sacrifice. The moves which come to mind are knight g3 check, bishop g2 check and qg1 check. Okay, the problem here with sacrifice of queen is that after qg1, kg1, this knight is not able to give check, and on the black square the bishop cannot do anything. After queen h2, king h2 also same thing, no time to improve the knight and give check. White will be simply a queen up. Black should consider knight g3 and bg2. So to knight g3 we see that there are two options, hg and rook g3. So black went into the move bg2 first, which forces him to take rook g2. And let's see quickly, after bg2, rook g2 and rook is deflected from the back rank. So now comes queen f1 check, rook has to go to g1 and now he will use the move knight g3 check. When the rook cannot take the knight because it is pinned, pawn has to take the knight and the queen goes to h3 and reverse mate. It's a very different pattern. We don't see this happening every now and then. So I find the final mate is not very unique, but the way we got that mate is somewhat unique. And now let's see and play the moves. Bg2, rook g2, queen f1 check, rook g1, knight g3 check, forced hg3 and qh3 mates. Let's look at the next position here. Again it is black to play. It looks as if on the last move knight has taken the rook on b8, and we see that white is materially up over here, white is exchange up over here, two bishops and two knights versus two knights and a bishop, rook versus rook. So there is rook for bishop situation, both knights are hanging. So if knight is taken, then we will also lose our knight on g4. Black's all pieces are attacking near the king, the rook is also able to join. So the weaknesses what we see here, one, the g3 square, knight can go to the g3 square. Second, we see the f2 square. Thirdly, the diagonals, both bishops are aiming on the diagonals. Because of the bishop's presence here, white got mated. So the candidate moves which come to mind are based on all these weak squares. So we have got knight g3 check, knight f2 check, bishop g2 check. These are the candidates which come to mind first. So as per our method, we will try to go into the forced moves first. So knight g3 check, king goes to g1, and we see that we don't have any other check other than knight into e2. Black rejects this idea because knight f1, then just hg4. Black has the move rook d1 which can be winning, but there is no mate over there. So black went into the next move, that is the knight f2 check. After knight f2 check, we see that if king h2 is played, then there is bishop f4 check, g3, bg3 mates. So this is the idea which black used in the main variation also. Here there is a problem. After knight f2, rook f2, e into f2 is there, or rook d1 check is there. So after knight f2, rook f2, rook d1 check, kh2, we can't play bishop f4 because of rook f4. So we will have to take ef2. When after bishop f2, we can say that black is winning after the move bishop f4, but play the move g3. Okay, that is also looking good because of rook h1, which might mate as well. But we can say that after the moves knight f2, rook f2, rook d1 check, kh2, e into f2, white may not capture bishop f2. He can make space for his king over there. So black chose another move which deflects this rook on f1. We see that rook on f1 is not allowing bishop f4 check. So the move which came to mind, black wants f2 and bishop f4. So rook is the defender and black got the move rook d1. Rook d1 attacks the rook, wins the rook. So the first problem is, if we take hg, then there is simply rook f1 check, kh2, bishop f4 check, king h3 or g3, to both there is rook h1, and the position is, it's a checkmate. Let's play the moves and see. Rook d1, hg4, rook f1 check, kh2, bishop f4 check, kh3, then rook h1 mate, g3, then also rook h1 mate. The b7 bishop is a very important piece. After the move rook d1, if rook into d1, that should be another main line. Then also nf2 check, king h2, bishop into f4 check, only move g3 when bishop into g3 checkmates. So this is the problem which white is unable to solve actually. See, after rook d1, knight f2 check, king h2, bishop f4 check, g3 and bishop g3 mate. See what I made using two knights and two bishops. And this mate is unavoidable. The rook is hanging, and like any move after nd2, nc3 or na3, when the rook tries to give X-ray support to the f1 rook, we see that there is still no defense to knight f2 check, king h2, bishop f4, g3 and bg3. Still it leads to the same mate. Let's look at the last position here. Black has sacrificed a lot of material to bring the white king out into the open, we can say into his territory. So this is a typical king hunt position. We see that the black pieces are about to checkmate the white king. This position is actually not that difficult if we try to look at the forced moves systematically. Otherwise it looks as if the position is really tough if we are unable to find the moves in a systematical way. So let's look at the candidate moves quickly. The moves which come to mind are rook a5 check, bishop d3 check. These two checks are there. Instantly they are looking attractive and it looks like both will win. Do note that white is able to deliver checks queen f6 and queen e8. So black has to act fast. White has the queen here and the black king is also not very safe. So let's go into the line which is most forced. So rook a5 check, king into a5. Then we see that knight c4 check, and after the move king a4, we see that bishop c2 is not made because of the move b3, and rook cannot go to b4 because king just takes b4. So rook a5 check just fails. Black went into the next line, bd3 check, forcing king a7, and now we see that there are two options here. In fact, three options here. There is knight c8 check, but when the rook can be taken. Second, rook a5 check, again the rook is taken, and we see that after the rook is taken, there is rook a8 check, king into c7, and then if we try to do knight d5, the pawn on c6 is lost. That is the problem over there. So black changes the order slightly. bd3, king a7, rook b8 check, forcing king b7, and now comes bishop a6 check. See, all checks are now forced, but white has no escape. Now king has to take on c7. The problem is the knight is hanging. So any check by rook allows kb6, but the knight goes to d5 and it becomes a checkmate. Let's play the moves and see. Bishop d3 check, king a7, rook a8 check, kb7, bishop a6 check, king c7 forced, and now the hanging knight itself gives the check. Knight d5 check, c6 is guarded by the rook, that is one of the important factors. King can't go to b7, d7, b6, all the squares are covered and it has become a checkmate. Do let me know in the comment section if it is more useful to have the black pieces down when doing black to play positions. I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.